Okay, I feel like I should state this before we really get into the video. I love indie games. I love them. A small dev team or a solo dev going out their way to make their dream a reality is awesome. Sometimes the development time for these games can take months to years, but it seems to be very worth it in the very end. There are many indie games that do decently well for a while others spread out into this franchise, spreading into many different forms of media, creating a very loyal and wholesome community/fanbase. And in this video I plan on talking about one of those games and how they've grown to such a large amount to the point where this game franchise is actually getting a movie. And I want to talk about how this movie won't be what you expect and why you really shouldn't have a high expectation on this film based on the information I plan on giving on. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. You've already read the title of the video, so you already have a general idea of what I'm going to be talking about: Five Nights at Freddy's. This is probably one of the most beloved and well-known indie game franchise like ever. FNAF is an indie game that's changed the way we view indie horror, from such a simple concept of a game growing into what we all know now, changing the style of the game mechanics with each new game that comes out, with the most recent one, FNAF Security Breach, being the most different of them all, with it being sort of a first-person open-world sandbox game. As a matter of fact, it was actually the most controversial of all FNAF games for many reasons. None of them are good, trust me, I made a whole video about it. Point is, this game franchise was great. It grew to such a high expectation that here we are many years later with an actual movie in the works coming out very soon. I'm thinking somewhere around the lines of early 2024 to mid 2024 is when this film is bound to come out. And many people are excited for the final product of this movie to come out, seeing how this movie has been delayed for a very long time. I was one of the many people that grew on FNAF and actually was super excited to find out that the movies was in the works. But now here I am, much older, not so much in my fanboy mode, and I've come to the realization that certain video games should not get an adaptation to a movie or a show. And as sad as I am to say this, FNAF is one of them. Now, hear me out. I don't want to sound like a hater of this franchise, and I'm not trying to say that this movie is going to be a terrible one, like the Mario Bros. Live action movie or the Uncharted film. But I will say that I would be lying if I said I haven't been very doubtful on the movie's expectations, which is weird, right? I mean, I'm now doubtful now when the movie is now in the works and being put in production. Like, what gives? Well, like I said before, I'm much older now and not so much a fanboy I once was back in the day. That, plus a variety of reasons on why this movie might flop, which I will give. So get yourself a snack because I plan on telling you why the FNAF movie might be a disappointment. I have two solid points on why you should not overhype or have a high expectation on this film, and I feel like the first point is pretty obvious, and that is the story and lore of FNAF. If you've been actually playing the FNAF games, you would know that this is not the type of game to give you a clear answer on the story. It's one of those games that make you do your own research on piecing things together, trying to figure out the lore through mini puzzles, games, or posters, merch, even voice lines. Now, over time, the story aspect of FNAF has been coming out more clear with these newer games like Security Breach. But still, even with a built-out story within the game, there's still so many unclear answers and unanswered questions. What I'm trying to say is that these endings for these games don't really feel like endings due to the unclearness of the story. Over the years, people have come together to try and piece out the FNAF story, and many people of the community have come to a sort of agreement on what the story seems to be about. If you were like me and you couldn't really take the time to find out the actual lore of the games, then you would just watch a MatPat game theory video, seeing how the guy has made dozens of videos built around trying to piece out the FNAF story. And over the times, there have been many new games for FNAF and many new pieces of information, whether it came from a book or another source of media, that the theory would actually change, which would then change the actual timeline within the story of FNAF on what we thought was right the first time. And as far as I know, Scott Cawthon, the creator of the games, has not given us, the people playing his games, any clarity on if these theories we're getting are correct, or if the timeline that most people agreed to be is right. And sometimes I feel like even Scott doesn't know the actual timeline to FNAF, like he's sort of making up the story as he goes. Not trying to diss Scott Cawthon or anything, that's just what it looks like from my perspective. Now, with the somewhat unclear timeline and hidden lore, does this sound like a game that would be a good candidate for a film adaptation? As a matter of fact, one of the reasons that I heard that had to do with this movie's delay in production was script changes. The people there could not find a good story that would make people happy along with fans watching this film. Games that have an unclear story to them and are built around you, the player, having to actually do the research and find out the lore yourself just does not seem like a stable candidate for a film adaptation. Well, the people who are writing this movie up figured out that problem because the FNAF movie is actually a more original story. At least that's what I heard. It still has the general plot with, the whole idea of the security guy watching over the pizzeria during the night times while the animatronics try to get him, but that's about it. There's going to be a bunch of original characters and a more original timeline story that doesn't really correlate as much with the games. When I first heard this, I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of bummed out. But if we really think about it, it makes sense, seeing how I just pointed out one of the few problems is the film trying to correlate to the game's story. Now, many people who are hyping this film up actually doesn't really know that the FNAF movie is going to take a more original approach, which actually might be the movie's downfall in a way. The community of the game has been going a bit to this toxic direction for a while now, if you don't know. So imagine if these super fans for this game found out that the story doesn't really correlate as much to the game. Yeah, I don't want to be on the internet when that happens, so let's just move on. Let's just hope the story turns out to be good. Also, I should have mentioned this at the very beginning, but I don't want your viewpoint on this film to be low. Like, if you're someone that has been waiting for this film to be in production for years, don't let this video make you think badly of it. Although if you're someone that is overhyping this film, I feel like this video is just due for you, just because I feel like I'm giving you this sort of reality check that overhyping is one of the many problems when it comes to new media that has been just announced, but actually haven't really come out to the public yet. Now, my next point has to do with this issue that revolves around previous spin-offs that follow the same particular trait and plot of the FNAF games. Now, over the years, there have been many attempts at people creating their own little version of the FNAF movie, and a lot of these were actually really good. Majorities of these so-called FNAF movies or FNAF short films were actually revolved around 3D animation, and a lot of these animations had their own little version of the FNAF story. This little piece in the community is one of the many reasons for people wanting a FNAF movie so bad, seeing how if people could create this amazing shorts revolved around the game, why can't there be an actual film? There were these even live action versions of these short films that were crazy next to these CGI. The production value of these short vids were crazy and they looked amazing. Channels like Iron Horse Cinema and Golden Lane Studio blew up due to the content they were making. Now, because of these videos, the mindset for an actual FNAF movie was possible. At least production wise it was possible. And over the years there have been many different spin-off ideas of the FNAF in the movie form. You've probably heard of these films like Willy Wonderland and the Banana Split movie. They're not the same as FNAF, but the general idea of animal animatronics killing people is there. Now these movies sucked. It was clear that these films were not to be taken serious and led to a more of a comedic way rather than the horror aspect. At least from my perspective. The film companies that helped the production for these films were actually built up companies that funded these projects, and I gotta say, production wise, these movies looks kind of ass, which got me worried for the FNAF film. And I know, the people that are working on the FNAF movie aren't the same that worked on these little spin-off ones. As a matter of fact, Blumhouse is the one working on this film, and Blumhouse is top-notch for horror films. But if you've seen the leaks, you would feel a bit uneasy. My main focus on this actual film is how the animatronics will look in this movie. And based on what I've seen, I'd probably give it a solid 6 out of 10, just based on what I have seen, not what other people have seen. Obviously, there have been no effects and the camera work, and the leaks are taken off this shitty iPhone from an outside perspective, so of course it's not going to look good. But just looking at a more first-person perspective wise, it looks like something some cosplayer could make. Not dissing on any cosplayers though. Hopefully when the movie drops, they're going to make the animatronics look more scary, but till then, I'm going to stay to my more worrisome mindset. Also, while we're at it, I heard that the FNAF movie is not going to hold back on the gore and violence. I just recently heard this news and I was like, what the fuck? I'm actually pretty interested on the film not holding back when it comes to the violence, and I for one can't wait to see it. I would be lying if I said it felt a bit weird when hearing this. Even though FNAF is built around the story of murder and violence with these kids being stuffed into suits and this one child getting his head chopped along with many other things. But hey, that's kind of all I got. Again, I'm not trying to diminish this film saying it's going to be bad, but I am saying you shouldn't overhype it. If you're someone that is overhyping it, chill a little. Just wait until the trailer comes out before saying anything and saying it's going to be the best film ever. If I made any mistakes in this video, like a few key information on this film that I let out, please say so in the comment section and correct me. It's most likely that I missed it while I was doing this video and the information just dropped. But I for one cannot wait for this movie to come out, seeing how I've been a pretty big fan of this franchise for a while now. And even if the movie does turn out to be bad, I'm glad that years later, after so many people asking for a FNAF film, it's finally coming out. And hey, if it turns out to be a really good movie, then you best believe I'm about to get so much backlash. So till then, see you guys in the next video. Just like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye.